The trouble with the spiritual teachings out there, a lot of them are really good, but people are not the same, and things work for one person doesn't always work for another person. So how do you find the thing that works for you? Today I'm going to try and show you how to do that and how I help people to find their spiritual path. I had a very painful spiritual awakening when I was in my late teens. I experienced divine love, but it wasn't pleasant. It was stressful. It was too intense, and it took me about 10 years to finally find the answer to that, to find oneness and connection with all things and the kind of peace and joy of spirit. And in that process I never managed to find anyone who could guide me, so I decided that maybe I need to become a guide for others. The 10 years went past learning how to guide other people and realizing that not everybody needs the same thing, and how do I find the thing that works for each person. And fast forward to today. These days I am helping people. I'm able to find a way to help each person to find their own path, their own approach to spirituality, and help to find that joy and connection of oneness. So, how do we do it? Well, there's different ways. We can look at just trial and error, and trial and error is a description that doesn't give it much respect. We could say spiritual science, because that's essentially what it is. What we're doing is doing an experiment, observing the results, and seeing what it does, seeing what works and what doesn't. So if you treat yourself as a scientist and you're going to explore the effect of different practices, different things that you can do, see what works for you, then you're going to find eventually the right thing that works for you. It's not the fastest path, because you have to try a lot of things out in order to find the thing that works for you, well, most likely. But it is the most sure path, and it is really the path that we're all on together. We're all exploring the science of spirituality, finding the thing that works for them, for us together and for us individually. So if you want to fast forward a little bit, find your path a little bit faster, maybe it's worth understanding a little bit about the psychology of spirituality and what works for different people, and you can predict it a little bit. So one of the things that I've noticed is, you'll notice some people are much more naturally believing in God and beings and angels, and other people naturally do not, and they're much more atheist. They don't believe in all of these things out there. They're only interested in the things that they can feel and perceive for themselves. And this leads to a very different approach to life. And rather than arguing between them, we can just find the approach that suits you. There are some paths that are much more based on a sense of energies that you can gradually feel, and others that are much more based on faith. So it's faith or the Force, like in Star Wars. And so if you're a person who is much more attuned to the divine, the angels, the beings, and you want to have a path that is relating to those, then you can take up something to do with prayer and traditional religious teachings, of course, in the best possible way. The Christian, the Jewish, the Islamic teachings, even some of the yoga teachings are based on believing in and connecting to some kind of God. And on the other hand, if you're not into that, then you can take some kind of Taoist, Buddhist kind of approach. And then you also have another distinction, which is between people who enjoy focusing on the future, creating their dreams, making things happen, versus people who like to be present, at peace, in the now. And this again leads to a very different kind of approach. So Eckhart Tolle's being in the now is very much about presence. Excuse the car. The secret is all about focus, intention, making things happen in the future. And I've noticed people who have really a lot of troubles in their life because they're trying to do a practice that doesn't suit them. There's one person who was trying to do being in the now, being present, and kind of forcing themselves into it rather than allowing them. And then when they actually allowed themselves, they were much more focused, intention, make things happen. And this was their natural path. Okay, so you can find that path, and in later videos we will explore in more detail the exact different spiritual paths depending on your psychological type in terms of this. The next thing that can strengthen your spiritual journey and help you find that joy and connection much faster is satsang, which is the power of presence. This I use in my guidance simply by being in presence myself. I find a strong presence of joy and connection, and then other people are gradually drawn into it. And so there's a lot of work that doesn't require actively doing something. Simply sitting in presence allows a lot of things to transform themselves. But if you're working by yourself, how do you do this? How do you work on it? Well, you can work on your own presence. You can just sit. Meditation that doesn't require any particular action, but just sit and see what happens. And a lot of the Zen teachers will encourage this. Just sit. You never know what's going to happen. You find something. And then we can also do awareness, and similarly just observe yourself. And the other aspect to this is presence is something that you get from being with good people. And so if you know good people, people who are happy, who are connected, who have that joy and spirituality in their lives already, hang out with them, spend time with them, and this gradually allows you to grow and become more in line with that more uplifted energy. There's also a wisdom that simply comes from connecting to these deep spiritual energies. And this wisdom comes across in my work in a natural kind of way. And so working by yourself, how are you going to find that wisdom? Well, if you're not already connected to that oneness, then it's a little bit difficult to find. But then this is why people read the texts of spiritual masters, the things that others have talked about, and try to understand the wisdom that is there in those books. It's not quite as precisely aligned to your needs because it wasn't designed for you, it was designed in general, but it's still, there's a lot of wisdom there, and by reading that we can learn something and learn to apply that in our own lives. Another thing I use is spiritual healing and spiritual medicines. So homeopathics are basically a medicine using the energies, the spiritual energies of plants and substances. I also make little medicines that are made in a similar way. We call them microvitum medicines, but they're made exactly through a spiritual meditation process. They're using the energies of the meditation rather than trying to use substances. And these are very powerful and really help people to transform. If you want to work with me, then we can use those things, and you can learn about them and use them in your own life. But also you'll find there's a lot of other spiritual healers out there. If you look around, you'll find some really good ones, and they already have their own ways of working that can really help you. So do look for people who can support systems, healing. A lot of the best spiritual work that I see around at the moment is in the healing field. Now, another principle that I work with is love, peace and joy. Love, peace and joy is what we're looking for. The experience of all three of these things. We have them all together, then we are really having a spiritual oneness connected experience. Now, a lot of traditions and people and places that you go to that call themselves spiritual will have some of these but not all of these. They'll have the joy and they'll go yeah and dance and party, but they're not really at peace. Or they'll have the love and the peace and they have a nice meditation, but there's not really that inner joy. And so what we're looking for is to put all of those three things together. It's good to recognize the stage of awakening that you're at and the stages that are to come and that you have already been through. And so understanding the 7 or 9 stages, depending on how you look at it, of spiritual awakening and that are recognized throughout the world and throughout the different traditions can really help you to find your way and to make you feel like you know how far you've come and how far you've got to go. So, stop. No. Okay, stop. It's too bright for me. I need my glasses.